Hi, I'm Ringarami, and welcome to the channel where I make things, and I've been watching a lot of videos about games I don't play lately. Mostly Creeps 20, which I love watching because it makes me feel nostalgic, as PVZ was my first true tower defense I ever played, and it's rather unique in the genre. Most tower defenses are similar to Bloons Tower Defense, a top-down experience where you place towers along a single long track that enemies travel down, and when you run out of lives, you lose. At least most of them I'm familiar with use the Bloons Tower Defense formula, even though Bloons Tower Defense didn't create it. It's just the most popular tower defense, so I use an example. But Plants vs. Zombies is really unique. Rather than one long winding track, it has multiple shorter tracks that enemies spawn on randomly, as well as instead of a life system, if a single enemy gets past your defenses, you're dead. So it's an all or nothing game, which is extra interesting considering this is a very casual tower defense. And really the only other people I've seen try to take this approach to tower defenses are people trying to rip off Plants vs. Zombies as opposed to people trying to pay homage to it, which is what I will do today, because I'm making a game. Asterisk, at least the concept art for it, the actual game will probably come later. And when trying to think of some fun gimmicks for my tower defense, I decided to do what all game designers do when they want to make their game quirky or interesting. I combined it with a completely unrelated genre, specifically card-based deck builders. Now, deck builders are another genre of game that I feel is lacking on the computer game market. They are one of two things: either the major IRL TCGs that have a PvP simulator like Master Duel or MTG Arena, technically Hearthstone, but that's completely online, but it still falls under that field in my opinion, or single-player roguelikes. Look, I like the roguelike genre, even in the deck builder niche. I play a lot of Slay the Spire, and I'm really looking forward to someday playing Spell Rogue because it's made by the people who made Deep Rock Galactic, and they fuck. But not only have they oversaturated the market to the point of parody, I just don't feel roguelike mechanics feel good in deck builders. Part of the fun of a deck building game is that you get to craft a deck that's uniquely yours, at least in theory if you're not a meta cuck. You develop your own strategy and make your own fun, unless you're me because I'm a meta cuck. And if your deck is bad, you can always improve it, or at least make it fun to play even if you're losing. That's the thing with roguelikes, you're not allowed to lose. Roguelikes are defined by two things: randomness and permadeath. Now regarding randomness, of course, card games, especially in real life, have always had a form of gambling in the form of packs, but those always have a limited card pool per pack, as well as if you really need to, you can buy singles. Meanwhile, in roguelikes, whatever you're given, you get. Even in games like Slay the Spire, where you can buy cards at the shop. The shop spawns randomly, and you're given a random selection of a small pool of cards that you have to choose from. You never truly get to choose what exactly goes in your deck. You still are just given what you're given. And if you ever lose, that's it. That deck you crafted is gone forever. If you've been having fun playing a certain playstyle for hours only to lose it all, it can get kind of frustrating, especially because you can't guarantee the next deck you build will be the same. But PVZ's progression system already fixes that issue. First off, levels aren't randomly generated. You always get what you expect with the experience. If you play level 1-1, you're gonna be playing level 1-1 every time. And when you beat a level, you're giving something new to progress through the story, whether it be a necessary tool to take out some zombies, such as the cactus with the balloon zombie, but also just some towers to help you spice up your playstyle. It adds variety, yet the variety is your choice. Now, there are flaws with the system that I'll explore in other videos, and that's even ignoring the fact that PVZ2 kind of feels pay to win sometimes, at least from an outsider's perspective, because again, I don't play it, because last time I played PVZ2, Wild West was still coming soon, and I don't think I have the knowledge to rightfully compensate on that, outside of just not making my game have microtransactions, you know? Now, we have a PVZ-esque tower defense and a card-based deck builder game, and combining these results in a very interesting game loop, because as you know, card games are turn-based, while tower defenses typically are in real time. Sometimes they have a wave system, such as getting set up and then a wave happens, set up, then a wave happens. I know Bloons Tower Defense does this, but typically when your enemy has their quote-unquote turn in tower defenses, you get to do stuff. In fact, you're encouraged to do so, as a lot of tower defenses give you more resources as you kill more enemies, making it so you can place towers down as the enemies die, killing more enemies and getting more resources. But I don't know, there's something special about when a genre that is typically not turn-based becomes turn-based, because one dev had a stupid idea, and that idea was less stupid than it sounded. Like Your Only Move is Hustle. It's a fighting game where every frame a player can do something, they're allowed to do something, allowing for some insane games with frame-perfect inputs, really only limited by your judgment and ability to read your opponent. And I've yet to actually see a tower defense that's turn-based. Probably could find one by Googling it, but if I have to Google it to know it exists, I don't really consider it popular enough for me to consider, if that makes sense. Although who knows, maybe someone watching this video is like a tower defense aficionado, and you should let me know about other turn-based tower defenses so I can steal their ideas. And turn-based games come with a unique restriction. Because you can only do stuff on your turn, it has a resource system built in, especially if the number of actions actions you're allowed on your turn is limited in some way. So we don't have to have something like generating cash or sun or just any other sort of tower defense system that's just wait for meter to fill up, which could be really interesting. So that's the process of how I got here. But what's the game about? Well, my placeholder idea that is subject to change in the future is that you are a necromancer who's returning home from a long journey. I may change it to a generic wizard as not to limit myself to undead themed towers, but who knows? I really like necromancers, they're pretty cool, and also means I get to draw a bunch of cool zombies and skeletons. Regardless, a bunch of people, heroes, villains, monsters, and everything in between or otherwise, are attacking you as you journey home, and you have to defend yourself long enough to make it to your wizard tower. But you're a squishy spellcaster. You can't go in hand-to-hand combat, so you do this by summoning minions to guard you. Plus the fact that as a character, you're moving from place to place not only allows for a cool mini-map system with the levels, you know, like the Mario series or I guess Inscription, that counts, but this means that levels can have some form of variation rather than be the same lawn every like 10 levels. Plus the more levels we have, the more Yu-Gi-Oh references I can throw in, because Yu-Gi-Oh is my favorite card game and is kind of what I took inspiration for when making the card game part of this, which you will see in a moment. Because I've talked enough about the premise. What about the actual gameplay? What is the gameplay loop the player goes through? Well, I feel that stuff like this is better to show rather than tell, but I can't program. But I do have Blender. The downside of that is I would have to spend hours making concepts for towers and then drawing those towers and drawing all my stuff, and I really don't have time for that because I'm moving. So how can I make something visually appealing with the equivalent of placeholder assets without wasting hours of time while it's essentially a proof of concept when I'm doing this instead of hacking? If only there was a way to make something without doing any of the work, having any talent, or creating anything original. Oh my god, James Somerton, are you here to give me advice to my predicament?
Make people think you killed yourself and get sympathy from Twitter.
I don't think that would help me.
Victim blame the people you stole from and blame health issues unrelated to stealing.
Oh, stealing, I can just do that. You could have started with that.
Steal from queer people and claim to be the voice for them.
I'm just gonna steal assets from big companies and throw them in Blender. I'll be going now.
Be a bad person.
So after using Pokemon DS Mapmaker and some cards from Yu-Gi-Oh! And throwing them into Blender and Wondershare Filmora, here is the proof of concept. You start with the lanes, which I made look vaguely like PVZ's lawn, but again, nothing here will actually be seen in game. In fact, all these assets will probably be deleted as soon as I finish these devlogs. So no lawsuit, Nintendo. Capiche? And hindsight actually looks pretty good, as long as you only view it from one side. Your main goal is to prevent your opponent from getting to your Necromancer, represented here by the default Blender cube. As like PVZ, just one enemy getting past is an instant loss. The game comprises of two phases, your turn and your opponent's turn, because that's how turn-based combat works. Both players have a pool of points that they can use to summon things on their turn. The opponent starts with 3 and you start with 1, and both players can save up to a max of 5, and you regain 1 as soon as your turn begins. Of course, this correlates with each tower having a different cost. The stronger the tower, the more it costs. Same with the units the enemy can summon. Now, the main reason I made the enemy start with more points than you, because a lot of the fun in PvZ for me is, in the beginning, being overwhelmed by your opponent trying to just set up your defense, and then snowballing your way into having advantage via good resource management to the point that you may as well just be sitting back and watching a movie. When the game starts, you draw a hand of 3 to 5 cards. I have yet to actually decide how much. And then of course on every other turn besides that, you draw a card. Now the game starts with your opponent's turn. The main difference between you and your opponent is that instead of drawing cards, they have access to all of your units at once. No need to draw them. And they're mostly balanced around the cost of their units. They can do one of 2 things on their turn. Either summon more troops with as many as their points allow, or have all units move forward at a cost of 1. Each unit having a different speed, but most of them only moving 1 tile. So the AI is mostly balanced around choosing between summoning, saving, and advancing. They're also limited to the first 1 or 2 tiles in summoning their units. So they can't just summon it on the end of your lawn and then kill you instantly. And then there's the player's turn. Now, of course, as I mentioned, you start with less points, so initially you probably gonna have to be saving a little more than your opponent, but this comes with the benefit that you can place your towers anywhere on the lawn. No need for movement, but I might incorporate that into some towers in the tower design video. And of course, like your opponent, you can summon as many as your points allow for. This can mean swarming the field with a bunch of small towers that are cheap, or one big tower that does a lot on its own but takes a while to get there. And finally, at any point on your turn, you can choose to attack, where all your towers will attack at once, dealing damage to whatever's in their range. Although if you forget to attack, don't worry, it'll happen automatically at the end of your turn. I don't want a new player not knowing they attack manually to accidentally skip their turn, or someone just, you know, playing while stoned out of their mind to just forget to attack, because that does happen. And from there, the game swaps between you and your opponent's turn, with either your opponent winning by breaching your defenses, or you win when the win condition is met. I'm still considering what the win condition is. It's either going to be a certain number of turns have passed, or possibly being your opponent's pool total being limited, such as even though they can only have 5 points at a time, they have a total of 30, and once they spend 30 points and all their units are gone, then you win. fusion, that still needs more thought. That's why this is devlog 0. Maybe it'll be different per level. After all, PVZ has a few of those, right? Regardless, I feel this greatly emulates the fun of single-player card games, with the strategy of tower defense games. And as I mentioned before, the point system incentivizes multiple playstyles. Either spam a bunch of cheap towers, save it for a big one, or you could find a nice middle ground. And the actual gameplay of the game being so simple lets the characters and towers shine. Each enemy you face will have a unique deck. Sure, some cards will probably overlap. You need a basic enemy, because otherwise the super enemies don't feel super, or something like that from the Incredibles. With this being a fantasy setting, there could be stuff like a knight who has a bunch of cards related to armor and possibly holy imagery, focused on highly armored units with healing capabilities. There could be a witch who has very weak units on their own, but has ways to give your towers a bunch of debuffs, making her units harder to kill despite their low strength. Maybe there could be levels where characters team up, allowing them to combine their unique mechanics, as well as explore another concept I wanted to add: fusion. Now, fusion is popular in a lot of different card games, but especially Yu-Gi-Oh!, the main inspiration for the card part of this game, as well as just my favorite card game. Seriously, I will convince my friends to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Someday. It is not a cope. It is not a cope. It is not a cope. So if you have 2 towers in your deck that have the capability to fuse, you can place one on top of the other and fuse them into a completely unique tower. Maybe your basic attacking tower mixed with a fire tower could make it a tower with like a flamethrower. Or on the enemy side, a weak witch enemy combined with like a holy knight enemy could create a fallen angel themed enemy. What it would do, I've yet to decide. But that's what the next video in the series will be exploring. Some enemy designs and the tropes you see in tower defenses with them, as well as exploring the kind of towers we could create. In fact, I already have a unique idea for a wall tower that moves closer to your opponent as the game goes on. But again, that will be explored next video. As well as I want to actually try to nail down the possible aesthetic for this game. Because while currently I'm going to be using a lot of placeholder assets, I do want to get as many visuals in as I can early, just to save myself a lot of work later down the line. If you have any suggestions for towers or enemy ideas, leave them down below. I'll make sure to credit you in the video if I use it. Because you know, unlike a certain somebody referenced in this video, I credit the people I take stuff from. And while someday, if this actually ends up becoming a full-blown game with a demo and everything, I might put it up on Kickstarter. But that's not today. That's so far down the line, like maybe 2 years from now. So if you do want to financially support me, I have a Patreon. It is pay what you want, so you could just get the stuff on there for free. It mostly has the line art from my other videos that you can use as a sort of digital coloring book for free. But if you really want to give me money, I guess you can. I won't complain about free money. There wasn't really any line art in this video, but there is a lot of line art in my other previous videos, such as my content warning video or my Lethal Company video, which I highly recommend both. Am I doing this self-promotion thing right? I don't normally do it. But this has been episode 0 of my devlog journey. I was really inspired by a bunch of game developer YouTubers that I both grew up watching, such as Blackthorn Broad, as well as a bunch of newer game devs that have been a big inspiration in getting to actually finish this concept video, even if the actual game never comes to fruition. Specifically want to shout out Jay the Dev Guy. He sure is. And so I thought I'd finally give my shot at making a game concept. Even if, as I said, nothing might come of this. This video might flop, I might lose inspiration, and I might move on to other projects, because in the words of Drawfee, sometimes you have to delete your art. I don't want to delete this though, this took me hours. Regardless, subscribe only if you enjoyed. I've been Ringrami, and know that I appreciate your existence. Please keep on existing. I hope you have a good existence. Bye! Goodbye hug.